We're learning Mishna is Chagiga, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishna Gimel, Mishna 3. Okay, so the Mishnah reads like this. Now, there's going to be a lot of words that are actually missing in the Mishnah, in the sense of how to understand it. So I'm just going to read it right now, and then I will explain how to explain the Mishnah. So the Mishnah reads, Oilos, burnt offerings, and in this case, we're talking about voluntary burnt offerings. Voluntary burnt offerings means that if any time of the year, if a person wants to, they can make a neder or a vow or a nedava. They can basically obligate themselves to bring a carbon, and they can decide that carbon is going to be an oil, a burnt offering. It's not a case where you're obligated for any reason to bring it. We're not talking about here the oilas re'iyah, the burnt offering that you have to bring on Yom Tif that we mentioned previously. Right now, we're talking about voluntary oilas. Now, if Chanukah time, you decide, you make a promise, you make a vow to bring an oila. So when do you bring it? A lot of times people bring it on Yom Tif, and they have to come up anyway, right? That's when they take care of their obligations. So now, the question is, if you come up for Yom Tif, and you have these voluntary burnt offerings that you have to offer, can you offer it on Yom Tif itself? The answer is no. You can't. Because since that burnt offering isn't meant for it to be brought on Yom Tif, its time is any time. So on Yom Tif you can't bring it. Then you have to wait for Chol Hamoed. Chol Hamoed you could bring it, but on Yom Tif itself you wouldn't be able to bring it. Now, so the Mishnah is like this: Oilais b'moyed, burnt offerings on Yom Tif. So the way to understand it is like this. I'm going to read it to you from the way they bring it down here. Voluntary oila offerings may be brought during Chol Hamoed, but not on Yom Tif itself, as I just said, since they are not required for that day itself, right? There's no fixed time for them to have to be brought, and therefore they cannot be brought on Yom Tif itself. The Eilas Re'iyah, however, meaning the Eilah that you have to bring when you come on Yom Tif to the Beis HaMikdash, and you have to now bring, everybody who comes to the Beis HaMikdash has to bring an Eilah, has to bring a burnt offering. That's an obligation to bring that. It's not voluntary, that's obligatory. That is brought even on Yom Tif, since it's a mitzvah to offer it on that day. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than just what I'm saying. The Eilas Re'iyah, it's a mitzvah to bring it on Yom Tif. That's correct. However, if let's say, Yom Tif is one day, right? It's one day. On one day, everybody cannot bring their Eilas Re'iyah. They can't bring their Eilas Re'iyah, even the one they have to bring. There's no way for everybody to bring it on Yom Tif itself. And that's why you have Chol Hamoed to bring it, right? And if it's Shavuos, you have you have 6 days afterwards to bring it. But the point is that the Eilas Re'iyah, actually, although it's obligatory to bring, do you have to bring it on Yom Tif? No, because if you don't get it on Yom Tif, you're going to do it a different day. So maybe, since I don't have to bring it on Yom Tif, maybe I can't bring it on Yom Tif. I can only bring it after Yom Tif, only on Chol Hamoed. The answer is no. The main time to bring it, the main mitzvah is to bring it on Yom Tif. If you can't bring it on Yom Tif, okay. So then you have the other days to do it. But its main time for performing that mitzvah and fulfilling that obligation of bringing your Eilas Re'iyah, the Eilah offering that comes when you come for Yom Tif, since its main time is on Yom Tif, you'd be allowed to bring it on Yom Tif itself. So that's the first half of the Mishnah. It just says two words. But there's a lot, as the Gemara points out, Martinur points out, there's a lot of words that you have to add. That's the first part. Oilais b'moyed, burnt offerings on Yom Tif. If we're talking about voluntary burnt offerings, it has to be Chol Hamoed. If we're talking about the Eilas Re'iyah, the Eilah that you have to bring when you come to the Beis HaMikdash, that could be on Yom Tif. That's number one. Next, Bo'is min ha'chulin. They have to come from chulin. That means from unconsecrated money. Now we know there is something called Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni means that after you've separated the Truma and you separated the first tithing from what's left for the Levi, there's a second Meiser that has to be separated. And during most of the years of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, that Meiser, that money is called Meiser Sheni, the second tithing. It's called the not money. I'm jumping the gun here. The second tithing of the grain is called Meiser Sheni, the second tithing. that grain that's been tithed for the Meiser Sheni for the second tithing is sanctified. You may only eat it in Yerushalayim. However, if you don't want to schlep all your stuff to Yerushalayim, you can redeem it onto money and take the money to Yerushalayim and spend the money in Yerushalayim on food. Okay? And so now, if you have Meiser Sheni money and you now want to go ahead and spend it on, you want to go ahead and buy a carbon with it. Right? You want to buy a carbon, you're going to buy an animal, and you're going to offer the animal, it's going to be a shlomim, you're going to eat from it, that's great. But Meiser Sheni money cannot be used to fulfill an obligation that you have. Meaning, an obligation that already you have, an obligation that you have to fulfill, you cannot use your Meiser Sheni money for it. So in the case of the Oilas Re'iyah, which is again an obligatory, which is an obligation to bring, you can't use your Meiser Sheni money to buy the animal to fulfill that mitzvah. You can't do it. Because since it's already an obligation, you can't use Meiser Sheni to fulfill that obligation. That's what it means, Bo'is Menachulin. The Oilas Re'iyah, that Oila that you have to bring, that you can bring on Yontif, it has to come from Chulin, regular money, unconsecrated money, not from the Meiser Sheni money. V'hashlamim, but the Shlamim sacrifice, Min HaMeiser, that can come from your Meiser Sheni money. That can come from the money of the second tithing. Now, the thing is that right away we have to ask, wait a minute, isn't there an obligation to bring a Shalmei Chagiga? Right? There's an obligation to bring a Shlam. What's called, we have Oilas Re'iyah. There's a burnt offering everybody has to bring, and there's a Shlamim. There's a Shlamim offering that everybody has to bring. A Shlamim offering, as we said, it's eaten by the owner. Some of it goes on the Mizbeach. Some of it goes to the Kohanim. But the point is, it's an obligation to do. And the Mishnah here is saying that your Shlamim can come from Meiser, can come from the Meiser Sheni money. How can it come from the Meiser Sheni money? You're using it on an obligation. The answer is, we're not talking about the Shalmei Chagiga. As we mentioned yesterday, when a person is in Yerushalayim, they have to bring Shalmei Chagiga. They have to bring, because of the Yontif, a Shlamim carbon. And then there's something called Shalmei Simcha. You have a Shlamim carbon to fulfill the mitzvah of Simcha. There's a mitzvah of rejoicing, and that means to eat from a carbon meat. And therefore, there's a specific Shlamim carbon that you use for Simcha, that you use to be able to fulfill the joy of Yontif that comes through eating meat. When the Mishnah here says V'hashlamim, the Shlamim sacrifice could come from Meiser, it's talking about the Shalmei Simcha. Because when it comes to Shalmei Simcha, let's say you have a friend. He brings a Shlamim, and he invites you to be part of that Shlamim. So now you had meat to enjoy Yontif from. Okay, you had meat to enjoy Yontif from. Do you now have to bring a Shalmei Simcha? No. Shalmei Simcha is in order to make sure that you have meat to fulfill the mitzvah of Simcha. If you have meat from somewhere else, you have a supply of meat to rejoice on Yontif from, then you're good to go. You don't need a Shalmei Simcha. You don't have to bring a Shalmei Simcha. So the Shalmei Simcha itself is not an obligation. It's only there if you need meat to fulfill the mitzvah of rejoicing on Yontif. But therefore, it's not considered an obligatory carbon. And therefore, if you're bringing a carbon shlamim for the Shalmei Simcha, in order to fulfill that mitzvah of Simcha, rejoicing on Yontif through eating meat, then you can use the Meiser Sheni money. Because that's not using the Meiser Sheni money for a sacrifice that you're obligated to bring. All right, that's that part of the Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah then continues. Yom Tov Harishon Shel Pesach. The first, we call it the first day of Pesach. The first day of Pesach, which is Yontif. Beis Shammai Omer min hachulin. Beis Shammai say, you bring it from unconsecrated money. Beis Hillel Omer min ha-meiser. Beis Hillel say, from your Meiser Sheni money. What are we talking about here? What sacrifice are we talking about? What sacrifice are we talking about when we talk about the first day of Pesach? We're not talking about the Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, first of all, you don't call that the first day of Pesach. That's the night of Pesach. Here we're talking about the first day of Pesach. So what are we talking about? So the truth is that although the Mishnah says the first day of Pesach, the Mishnah could have said the first day of any Yontif. And what the Mishnah means is like this. as we mentioned before, any person who comes to the Beis HaMikdash for Yontif has to bring an oil carbon, and they have to bring what's called a chagiga, shalmei chagiga. They have to bring a shlamim carbon. Every person has to bring that shlamim carbon because of the chag, because of the festival. That's obligatory. You cannot use Meiser Sheni money for that. You can't. It's an obligation. However, because it's a shlamim carbon, you have people that are going to be eating from it, right? The owner eats from it. Now, the owner may have a big family, may have a big entourage with him. And that one carbon, that one animal that he wants to fulfill his mess of Shamei Chagiga with, isn't going to be enough for everybody. So what does he do? He brings another one, brings an extra one. He brings 2 animals for his Chagiga. So in essence, he's got one animal that he really needs to bring to fulfill his obligation. He's got the other animal because he wants to make sure that his whole family and group can participate in it. So he brings a second one. Now the second one also gets the status of a chagiga carbon. It's not so much the obligatory one, but it is considered a chagiga sacrifice. So now the question is, that second animal, what money can it come from? From that second animal, does it have to come from non-consecrated money? Or could it come even from the consecrated money? Do we see it as an again, essentially, you can't call it an obligation because he's not obligated to bring 2 animals. However, once he's bringing the 2 animals, both animals have the status of shalmei chagiga, of the shlamim carbon for the yontif. And therefore, now we have the machlokes by Shammai Beisel. By Shammai say minachulin. You got to bring that animal from the non-consecrated money, because it has the status of a shalmei chagiga. If it has that status, then it has to be considered like an obligatory animal, an obligatory sacrifice. It's got to come from chulin. It's got to come from unconsecrated money. Beisil will say no. It can come from meiser. It can come from the meiser money, because of the fact that, again, essentially you're only bringing it because you want to be able to feed more people from the sacrifice that you're bringing. Being that's what it's really essentially about, basically will say that animal can come from Meiser. Now, one last thing, and that is, so why it's now, what we just said applies to any yontif. So why did the Mishnah talk about the first day of Pesach? Why did it talk about the first day of Pesach? The answer is because the Mishnah wants to actually allude to something else. When you bring a carbon Pesach, the halacha is you have to eat it al haseva. You can't be hungry when you eat it. You have to be somewhat satisfied. You got to be somewhat filled, and then you eat it, and then you eat the carbon Pesach. Now, if let's say you have an animal and you have a small group that are part of this animal, so everybody can get a big enough piece from the animal that one part of what they're eating is to make them somewhat full, and then the rest of it will be the fulfillment of the mitzvah of carbon Pesach. And what if you have too many people for one animal? It's got a lot of people, and it's one lamb, it's one kid. You don't have enough. You don't have enough people. You have enough people to theoretically eat a kazayas, the amount that you need for fulfilling the mitzvah of carbon Pesach, but you don't have enough to give everybody to first fill themselves and then eat carbon Pesach. So what do? Bring another animal along. Bring another one. And that's called Shalmei, I can't remember what that's called, but that's called the Shlamim Erev Pesach, which means, again, it's not obligatory. It's coming to make sure that when you do the mitzvah of carbon Pesach, that you can first have some carbon meat to fill you up, and then you'll be able to have carbon Pesach meat to fulfill your mitzvah. So that animal, that extra animal, that extra carbon is also a shlamim. It's a shlamim. It's a shlamim carbon that people eat from. You're bringing it in order to be able to fulfill the mitzvah carbon Pesach properly. That is an example, according to everybody, that you can use the Meiser Sheni money for it, because that doesn't even fall. It's not called a carbon Pesach. It's a shlamim carbon that you bring in order to be able to make sure that everybody can be full, a little bit full before they eat the carbon Pesach. That no one considers a obligatory carbon. It's not going to get even the status of obligatory carbon, and therefore, according to everybody, when it comes to that animal, you would be able to use your Meiser Sheni money to be able to buy that animal. Okay, I have the Chofetz Chaim. Chofetz Chaim reads like this. All right, so the Chofetz Chaim said before that there are those who say that if you speak Lashon Hara in front of 3 people, one of those three people can go spreading it because it's going to spread. And something that's going to become known is not considered Lashon Hara. However, you stipulated that's only true if your intention is not to spread this piece of news. You're just, you're mentioning it not to spread it. You're just mentioning it. Now, Mishif Dollar reads like this. And even that which we permitted in a situation where your intention is not to spread it, you're just talking. This is only referring to the person who actually heard it. He is one of the three who heard the original person saying the Lashon Hara in front of the three. He's one of those original three. But now, we just said one of the three people who heard it, they can now say it over. All right? Now you heard it from one of those people. Can you spread it too? Can you say it over now also? The answer is no. The person who told you says, I heard this in front of I was one of three people who heard this. So therefore I can say it. All right. That means, though, what about me that I heard it from him? Can I rely on him to say that it was said in front of three people so that now I can also spread it? The answer is no, you can't do that. You cannot afterwards go, al smach hazeh, she'amar lei mesaper loy, shema devezeh ba'pei klasa. You can't go now and spreading it because of the fact that he said, I heard it in front of three people. I was one of the three people who heard it. And to say to somebody else this derogatory thing about this person. And even though he's not mentioning who's guy spreading it, who started this, who said it originally, he's not saying it. Nonetheless, he cannot now continue spreading it unless somehow or another this is already out there. It's already out there. Everybody knows about it. It's out there. It's been put in the. It's been spread. It's been spread. In that situation, again, according to this opinion, that says that something that is spread and known is not considered speaking Lashon Hara, you'd be able to then say it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.